Kevin Gosschalk. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Brett. How are you?
You know, I'm all right, man. I've been traveling, and of course, cybercrime never stops. It never sleeps. So I am worn out, but we've got something to talk about today.
We do. There's some new tools. I mean, there's always new tools coming out, as we both know. Always interesting to kind of get our hands on it, play with it, look at it. See
I know, right?
And all that good stuff. So maybe we should start with some introductions on who we are. So I'll let you start. So
of course you will.
You're our Chief Criminal Officer here at Arkos, Brett. Maybe you want to give a bit of a high level on yourself, your background, what that means.
Sure. So let's go into that. I'll start with my usual show intro. Hi, I'm Brett Johnson, former United States Most Wanted cybercriminal, now good guy, and Chief Criminal Officer for Arkos Labs. So what does that all mean? Well, it means that back in the day, I was a not so good guy. The United States Secret Service called me the original internet godfather, and I got the title from committing 39 felonies because 38 wasn't enough. I was on the United States Most Wanted list. I escaped from prison. But the big one is I built and ran the first organized cybercrime community. Shadow Crew was a precursor to today's darknet. Darknet markets laid the foundation for modern cybercrime. That definitely get one sent to prison. And the thing is that I was very fortunate. Through the help of my wife, my sister, the FBI, I was given the chance to turn my life around. In the past few years, I've been trying to protect or doing my best to protect businesses and individuals from the type of person that I used to be. And you, Kevin, you run a fantastic security company, Arkos Labs, and I was very fortunate that you decided to create a new C-level position, first one on the planet, of Chief Criminal Officer. And I'm every day I'm stunned with the work that Arkos does and my position in that company.
Yeah, that's great, and it's a privilege to work with someone with such a unique perspective, I think, on the space. So we obviously appreciate the partnership. So for folks that don't know me, I'm Kevin Gosschalk, the CEO and founder of a cybersecurity company called Arkos Labs, and we really focus around account security, stopping bad actors getting into consumer accounts, stopping bad actors opening accounts, account takeover, credential stuffing, phishing, fake accounts, synthetic fraud, all that fun stuff. And the way we think about this is through the lens of what motivates the adversaries. And Brett, what motivates adversaries? Who better to ask?
Well, that's the thing, right? I mean, there are three motivations for online crime. Those three motivations are status, ideology, cash. So status. Can you do something that no one else in your criminal community can do? If you can, you get respect. That equates to cash. Ideology. Do you have a different political opinion? Have you angered someone? So those are two of the motivations. The big motivation, as you know, Kevin, the big motivation is cash. People are looking to put cash in pocket. So we at Arkos, what do? We try, or we succeed rather, in increasing the cost of that attack. We bankrupt the business of fraud.
Exactly. So it's all about how do we take away their profit motivation? And if it's more expensive to attack a target, go after a victim, than it is the return on that investment, surprise, surprise, they actually stop and they don't do it. They'll go either get another job, hopefully a real job, or they'll go target another victim or whatever it may be, but they won't attack that target.
They definitely find a cheaper target to hit. Right. Absolutely.
So today we're going to talk a little bit about a new tool that came out in press waves this week. It's a reverse proxy man-in-the-middle MFA/OTP interception attack. So that's the technical spiel, but I can share a little bit about what that actually means and show you actually what this tool looks like. As well. So we can just put the slides up on the stage here. And, obviously, like I shared, first and foremost, adversaries are going after this to make money. So that's the root of all objectives. But let's talk a little bit about this technique and this attack. So it's got a pretty lengthy technical term. So phishing sites are a pretty common thing. I just want to make sure the slides are up on the screen. Is that right?
I There we go.
This is why I checked, very important. So yeah, this is a new kind of phishing attack where it's not just about the user inputting username and password so the fraudster can grab those and go log in. A lot of websites nowadays, especially fintechs, financial institutions, and things like that, enforce or require multi-factor authentication. This is a good thing for security, makes it much harder for the fraudster, but there are new techniques that let them get around even those processes. And maybe first and foremost, we should talk a little bit about multi-factor or high-level Brett. I know this is obviously something we advocate companies use. A lot of companies try and get their customers to use it, but we of course know it's not a silver bullet.
No, it's not. It's a lot of the times, multi-factor is an outstanding tool. It is, and we talk frequently about how tools are good, but tools are not be-all, end-alls of solving our problems. We need a toolbox. Attackers out there use a variety of tools with which to attack us. They use a low-level social engineering type tools. They use the APT type tools like we're seeing here. This is a type of attack that has been an advanced persistent attack, but it's now being offered to the 99% of cyber criminals out there that are not sophisticated. What you need to understand is that a tool is simply that. It can be bypassed. It can be worked against. What you need to do is you need to a multi-layered approach so that everything is protected across the board. And that's the necessity of things.
So let's talk a little bit how they do this. So here's kind of a high level on how the technique works, but we come back to that. I'll talk about a more tactical example. So sure. The way phishing sites work is they make a fake site that looks like your login page. But the way that they get customers or their targets to those pages, victims perhaps, better word, is they've got to get that link out to as many people as possible. So they send it through email spam. They there's a number of messaging platforms, but basically they need to get as many people as possible to go to an email or a form that links them off to that phishing site. So step one is basically they mass email these things, and that's typically how phishing sites eventuate. You might get an email from what looks to be your bank. When you click it, it's actually not your bank. There will be something unusual about the URL. In this case, you can see it's got bank with two N's. So they're registering domains that are very similar to the target objective that they're going after. And the goal, of course, is you get the victim to input their username and password. The really unique thing about the reverse proxy attack is it handles the OTP interception process. So basically what it does is when I put my username and password in here, the phishing site itself sends a real request to the real bank, the backend server of that real bank, with that username and password the customer's given them. And that triggers the OTP process back to the real user's device. So the real user who's logging in on this phishing site will now get a text message from the bank saying, you're trying to log in, here's your MFA. And the phishing site in real time updates to ask you to input that MFA. And then when you type it in, it then goes back to the real bank site with the real MFA. And then the bank responds back to the proxy with your real login token. So now the adversary has collected your login cookie, and they can go log in as they see fit. They've now gotten through authentication. And the customer would now be redirected to somewhere else, or they'd say there's an error or something. They'd do something to kind of masquerade the fact that they're not actually logged in. But at that point, the adversary is now fully past the OTP process. So I guess, again, at kind of a high level, you can kind of see what it looks like to the user is it's a valid site, but actually in between that fake site and the real server, there's this reverse proxy. So all the traffic is going through the adversary's proxy, and it's intercepting and doing all this work behind the scenes, and ultimately collecting your login cookie so they can get into your account. And it's basically, it lets them scale dramatically the ability to do one-time PIN or multi-factor authentication bypass attacks, which traditionally the way they've done that, Brett, maybe you want to talk a little bit about calling victims and how they kind of would traditionally maybe go about this technique.
Sure. So usually the way that type of thing works is it's a social, as you pointed out, phishing historically is a social engineering type of attack. You manipulate that victim into doing what you want that victim to do. In order for that to happen, you have to establish some degree of trust with that potential victim. I don't care if it's a company. I don't care if it's an individual. They won't do what you want them to do unless they trust you. What we're seeing with EvilProxy and this type of man-in-the-middle attack is that establishment of trust. They're actually using the actual MFA, that token, to intercept the cookie and then log in, do whatever they want to. This type of attack, it really puts in danger every single login that you've got. So that's a lot of what's going on here in layman's terms. It's amazing to me. And I'm sitting here, I didn't find out about this until yesterday when you called me, Kevin, but it's truly amazing to me that the market continues to evolve to allow. And as you know, most cyber criminals they're not sophisticated. They use tutorials. They use off-the-shelf products. And this is exactly what this is. You subscribe to EvilProxy, $250 for 20 days. It's $400 for 30 days. As soon as you subscribe to it, they open up some portals to you that walk you through. It gives tutorials on how to walk through, use the product or service. There are ready-made phishing sites already up that you can use and implement immediately to start attacking people. The only thing you have to do is disperse the product, mass email, whatever you're going to do. It's just.
So maybe let's show this a little bit.
Sure, please.
Right. So we're talking about conceptually how it works. So one of the early iterations of this isn't necessarily a modern technique. This has been around a little bit, but the new tool we're about to walk you through is a much easier to use, much lower barrier to entry, and it has pre-made templates and all this fun stuff. But there's a tool on the market, Modlishka, I guess is how you pronounce it. But you can actually go, this is open source. You can actually search this name and you'll find this on the public domain.
Right.
This particular tool does what I described. So it is a reverse proxy server that you can host, and it will man in the middle of the requests. There's some questions in the comment section about, can the banks detect that it's coming from a proxy? Yes, theoretically, the IP address is actually the adversary server that's connecting to the bank's infrastructure. So there are signatures and telltales that you could look at. Obviously, you start getting into the world of what looks to be like a synthetic request. So it's like a bot automated request, but it's actually being done by the real user that drives it. So as the real user does login, that's when it makes the request. So it doesn't look like bot traffic. It doesn't have the volumes of bot traffic, but that server, that infrastructure will have some signatures that look bot-like in terms of the IP address, signatures, things like that. So there are those kind of components. This older tool, really, they just gave you the code and they didn't really do much else. They coined it as a security tool, as all these fraudulent tools, unfortunately, are coined as like, oh, they can use this for pen testing and whatever that may be. Unfortunately, adversaries use these tools to commit real harm and do real damage all the time. The new tool, EvilProxy, which Brett was just talking about, basically takes this to the next level. So not only does it do the same in concept, but it has ready-to-go one-click configs that will spin up all of the top sites that you might want to do this attack against. They're all pre-made out of the box. You just click a button and it'll automatically create the site. It will perfectly mirror match their login page one-to-one, and it handles hosting, all these kind of things for you. And it's actually a subscription service. So it's what do they call it, Brett? Phishing as a service?
PaaS, phishing as a service. That's the coined term.
Yep. So,
and I expect it will catch on.
I imagine it will. This will be the first of many, as we've always seen. And this from the Arkos perspective, our objective is to continue to raise the cost for adversaries. There's really kind of three strategies we think for dealing with adversaries. One is increase the effort. Two is decrease the value. So if they do get into an account, really make it hard for them to extract money out, like decrease the value of their success. And then the third is real world consequences. Go work with the FBI, the feds, and whatever it have be, and go after these people. They're kind of the really three strong ways of deterring adversaries. Problem with a tool like this is it dramatically lowers the effort for an adversary. So it's starting to move in the obviously it changes the attack landscape quite substantially. It makes it a lot easier. This is where you can get this tool. I know, Brett, you found it in a number of different places.
Right.
But effectively, they're advertising, as you can see, a number of popular domains. There's a fee on a monthly, on a 10-day, 20-day, 30-day basis, 31 days in some cases. I don't know why some are 31, some are 30 anyway. And it basically handles, so for example, it'll handle completely bypassing Google OTP. And I'll show you an example of that in a moment. Right. They even provide things like bot protection on the domains you spin up, which is kind of hilarious to me. So it's a full service product. And effectively what it gives you is the login, the password, and the cookies to get into the account. And this works at unlimited scale. I guess, Brett, you're talking about phishing. What's one of the downsides with humans having to call people?
Well, it takes time. Right. And it's difficult to a human being. I mean, if you run bots effectively and the target doesn't have bot protection, you can do a lot of damage. But a lot of phishing is just human driven. Yep. So when you've got an attack like this, and you alluded to it just a second ago, and there's a question that came in: how much money can you make? Well, how much work do you want to put into it would be my question. If you don't want to put much work, well, maybe not. But hey, if you want to work at EvilProxy, yeah, you can profit a lot really quickly on that. Phishing, it still amazes me that most people don't know how to launch a phishing campaign. The 99% of criminals out there don't know how to do that. They have no idea how to get past MFA. So they don't. There have been tricks to try to get people to bypass it for you. You call, you send an SMS, something like that, and you try to trick somebody into doing that. This man in the middle establishes trust with that potential victim by using the actual login at the bank, by triggering that, so that there's no real indication that the victim is being fished out at all, unless a group like Arkos can come in and handle that for you. Right, Kevin?
That's a part of it. Let me kind of show you the tool. So this is the tool in action. So you can log in, you click a button, and you pay a fee, and it will actually spin up the domain for you. There's a bunch of configuration settings you can put in place. So it's got quite a nice user experience. And that does matter. Like, you compare something like OpenBullet for credential stuffing versus Sentry MBA. OpenBullet is just leaps and bounds better. The UI is better. It has far more advanced features, functionality. I would say this is kind of like an equivalent of evolution between the prior tools and like what OpenBullet's brought for the credential stuffing market, but for phishing. You can go through setting. Here's an example of like, where do I redirect the visitor after they've successfully logged in? I send them to, in this case, they're sending them to the logout page. You can send them anywhere you want. So you have full control over that user's session to make it seem authentic. So this is an example of this tool. As you can see, the domain is not google.com, but the experience completely mirrors Google. So the whole Google sign-in experience is basically being set up as a fake site. I put in my username, I put in my password, and what that will actually trigger is the real, true OTP process, because remember, behind the scenes, they're hitting Google's real server with these requests, and it's triggering the real process on your device. And when you go to your real phone and accept it, you're actually letting the attacker log in. So this actually bypasses like all forms of multi-factor, not just one or two. It's not just text messages. This works on any flavor. It also works on things like security codes. So you can choose, this is the fake site. This is the phishing tool that's built all of this. You can click any of these different options, and the phishing site knows how to dynamically handle those scenarios. It knows what code to send to Google and what code it shouldn't send to Google. And when you go through and do all of this, and of course, to you as a customer, looks like it's all normal. Like if you're getting the real prompt on your phone, or you're getting a real text message from the site you're trying to log into. So it all seems authentic. But of course, it's actually the attacker's tool that's collecting all this data in real time.
Right. And realize too, you had said, you pointed out a couple of times that the URL is not accurate. And you're right, but it doesn't have to be just a simple like domain that's been registered. It can be a Unicode domain. Yep. Where it's something as simple as maybe the I doesn't have a dot above.
Yeah, that goes back, like when they're setting up this attack for real, that was obviously an example. When they set it up for real, it will absolutely use a domain that mimics as close as possible, like Brett's saying, to the real domain. So let's talk a little bit about Arkos and how. So we've been seeing these attacks in the wild for a couple of months, and we built some tools to help our customers mitigate these kind of threats. So let me talk a little bit about how we do that. And of course, Brett and I are very happy to take questions as well. You can also message us offline, and we're happy to talk about it there. It's something, you know, our passion is learning about these tools and understanding them. So Arkos at a high level, again, we're in the business of raising adversarial effort and cost. We have two core product offerings. One where we give a bunch of data. So when our users trying to log in, we give a bunch of data to our customers on risk levels and threats and things like that. And then our core product offering, which also incorporates our challenge technology. So we can actually challenge a user in real time to ask them to take an action, to do something different, to prove and verify, because something's unusual. So prove and verify what's going on. And we've actually built a new phishing detection capability, which lets us first identify these inauthentic requests from these proxies, and secondarily actually present a warning to the customers, which is actually quite unique through how we do things. We collect a bunch of different data signals with pre-authentication. So we're looking at things like the device, the network. Obviously, proxy is something we can look at, the behavior, those kind of capabilities. Like I mentioned, we share quite a lot of data back to our customers. And then we have a challenge component, which is something we've actually leveraged to do some pretty novel things in this particular context. So this flow, like I said earlier, if Arkos is implemented in front of the multi-factor request, for an attacker to make a request to prompt the multi-factor process to start, it actually requires an Arkos token to be included with that request. And there's a unique token that we generate every login attempt. So now the attacker actually has to incorporate the Arkos solution into those requests for this attack to be viable. So what we actually saw was they would include our script on the phishing pages, and that would let them generate a token so they could then pass it up with the username and password to, again, trigger that process. If anyone's in security and understands what that might mean, it obviously gives us a lot of power, because now we're actually on the phishing domain. And the attacker has no choice but to do this, because there's no other way to interact with that server without incorporating the Arkos request. That's just how our product works. So now when they make this request up, we actually can see that it's coming from a non-valid domain. Obviously, our customers share with us their valid domains that they own, so we can see that. We can also see the phishing reverse proxy itself, which, as some folks have pointed out, it's coming from a non-legitimate IP address, which they might use a proxy to mask. There's a bunch of ways they can try to do that. It also does device spoofing, so that's another feature it mentions. We have capabilities to detect spoofing devices, those kind of things. And what we can do is not only can we reject the MFA verification process at the server, but because our script is running on the phishing domain, we can actually present a warning to the customer who's landed, unfortunately, on a phishing site. And our customers are actually using this now in the wild. So, you know, we haven't officially announced this as a new offering, but it is something that we do work with a bunch of customers that are piloting as we speak this technology. So two benefits here, obviously, is you reject the MFA process, so it stops the attack in its tracks. But secondarily, you're also now warning your customers automatically without you needing to go find these sites by yourself, which is a big issue a lot of companies deal with. So we're very proud of the work we've done building this solution. And I think the novelty of us leveraging our challenge technology to interdict UI on a phishing site and warn a customer is really cool. I think that's very powerful and helps. It's going to go a long way to help stopping these kind of attacks.
I mean, it's very effective. And then, and as you pointed out, the good part about it is that they have to incorporate the Arkos product in order for the attack to work.
That's right.
So there's no getting past that at all.
And that's very unfortunate for them. It gives us a lot of power to help.
Well, it increases that cost of attack just a little bit.
Just a little bit. So this obviously is quite game changing for companies that are dealing with these reverse proxy attacks. So we'd be more than happy to talk about our solution. We can also provide tips and techniques that you might be able to look for these kind of threats yourself. And additionally, obviously, this is added alongside our typical suite of services like credential stuffing. We are the only solution provider with a warranty for credential stuffing as well. So this is just yet another capability that we're bringing to market, protecting you from synthetic accounts, fake accounts on sign up, but all forms of these kind of ATO attacks on login. So reverse proxy, man in the middle attacks are now something that we add to our repertoire of capabilities we mitigate against. So yeah, so we're glad you all had a chance to join us and listen in. We're happy to follow up and have a conversation. You can reach out to Brett or I. These attacks continue to decrease the effort for adversaries, which is, I think, a tool like this, and Brett, happy to hear your thoughts on this too, but this, I think, will bring OTP bypass to the masses for the first time. I think we're going to truly see a big shift in the thought process that I've got OTP, I'm covered. I think a tool like this is going to change that pretty dramatically.
This is again, this is like the continued evolution of cybercrime as a service. You've got it's almost as if the mass market has realized that there's 98% of cyber criminals out there aren't sophisticated, and they need to deliver sophisticated products and services to them. This is just the start. This has been out since May. This is just the start. We will see more and more vendors offering this type of man-in-the-middle attack. It is not going to get easier if you are not already protecting yourself against that. I promise you, they are going to eat you alive. So you need to do something now because it's coming.
Excellent. Well, again, thanks everybody, and we'll see you next time. When we see some new tools out in the wild, we'll be sure to do an update.
Absolutely. Stay safe out there.